You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Oh my God, not the Prospect Spotlight. I'm sorry. My wires are getting crossed. The last two shows, I've butchered my own intro. What the hell? You're watching the 49K podcast. I'm Steph Sanchez. Joining me as always on a Monday, Weston. Weston, how you doing, man?
I could be a prospect. You never know.
When's your pro day, man?
You know what I mean? It's keeping it real hush hush. It's gonna be like the 19th of April, right before,
Sources say you're invited to the local pro day. So
look out for that hot 5-second 40-yard dash from a washed up has-been.
Yeah, what's the 40-yard dash looking like for you these days?
These days, I'd be impressed if I got sub 5. These days, I was a burner in the day. Don't let them fool you. I was a 4.5 guy and change, but that's all I was. Just speed and 140 pounds with 10 pounds of quarters in my pocket.
That's wild. Well, yeah, I'm 5 feet, so my strides aren't quite there. But I'd like to think I could do sub 5, but never. I don't think that would happen.
So it's a lot faster than you think. When you see these big 350-pound dudes break sub 5, that's moving. That's boogieing. That's almost more impressive than a 4.2 from a 160-pound guy.
Most definitely, for sure. But on that note, we've got plenty to talk about in regards to the draft prospects in this class, and in particular, which prospects the 49ers are planning to bring in for a 30 visit. Weston, let's just jump right into it. Today was a very busy day to find out about some of these visits. I don't know if it was just national agents tweeting or DMing media people to let them know who they're visiting with. But man, just across the board, there were a lot of names that were flying around getting reported out there. And as far as the 49ers, at this time, as we record here on April 7th, there are 10 reported 30 visits for the 49ers that we know of so far. First, let's go through the defensive linemen first. Edge Mike Green from Marshall, edge Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, edge Michael Williams out of Georgia. Then into the interior guys, Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee, TJ Sanders, South Carolina, and then a couple of offensive linemen, tackle Kelvin Banks out of Texas, guard Miles Frazier out of LSU, and then a couple of tight ends, Jalen Conyers out of Texas Tech, and Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green. Before we went live, Weston, I was like, these 30 visits are speaking to us, because if you didn't notice, there's a lot of defensive linemen on this list. And if you hadn't noticed yet, and it's hard not to, 49ers are in great need of defensive linemen in this draft. So much so, it wouldn't even be crazy if they went defensive linemen with all 11 picks. That's the joke, right? But in all seriousness, big need for the 49ers, and looks like something they're addressing with these 30 visits.
Yeah, and I think that's good to see, right? Is that what have we been talking about as the greatest need? If we're not blind to this, I'm sure the organization is not blind or oblivious to this as well. So an opportunity, I just like it because I feel like what we got, 10, 11 players so far for the allocated to the top 30 visits.
10.
Every one of these players has been linked to the 49ers in some mock draft variation that you have seen. I like every one of these players for the San Francisco 49ers, and I think what you're going to see come into shape is the prioritization, right? What positions are they going to be heavy invested in? Because it's almost like they're plotting the sequence of events, right? These are the guys that are round 1 at this position. These are the guys that might be round 2, day 2, day 3 at this particular position. But it's all coming to light that clearly there's going to be a significant investment made into the youth movement of the defensive line of the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, folks, for anyone that hasn't seen it yet, I have my draft tracker, bit.ly/49ers draft tracker 2025, bit.ly/49ers draft tracker 2025, to be the most up to date one could ever be when it comes to everyone and anyone that the 49ers have met with, spoken with, having these visits with. That will be tracked in the tracker. And not just that, like, there's information on each player that goes beyond just the reports, right? Weight, adding RAS as well. When Dane Brugler puts out the Beast, which is giant draft guide, the best in the business, I will be populating more of that information for you guys in that sheet as well. But in any case, on Friday, me and Wayne went over the 49ers roster, position by position, and we pretty much, kind of gave an assessment of what the 49ers' biggest needs are. And again, we have the obvious ones, right? So the obvious ones, defensive tackle, edge, and we also had linebacker, Weston, pretty high up on the list too. In fact, we kind of have linebacker and edge as like 2A, 2B, like that. Honestly,
Yeah.
could either way for me. And then, from there, you get corner, you got wide receiver, you got tight end. So those are like secondary needs. But as we see here on this list too, like there's offensive linemen on this list, there's tight end on this list. And so based on the names of offensive linemen I'm seeing on this list, Miles Frazier, I think is looked at as more of a day 3 guy, but Kelvin Banks is like a day 1.
Yeah.
Right. And there's rumblings that he could maybe even be the pick at 11. Again, that's just like rumors and fans talking, but that would, I think, kind of break the internet, because with all the other priorities, I would say the 49ers have, and all the homework that they're doing on defensive linemen early in this draft, I'd be pretty surprised if they went with Kelvin Banks, for example, in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised or upset, however, if they ended up with Membu, if they ended up with Will Campbell. But what are your thoughts on Kelvin Banks, Weston, and if he were the pick?
So here's my concern. This is not just a Kelvin Banks statement. This is a Membo statement. This is I'm drawing a blank on the kid from LSU. Why am I drawing a blank on
Will Campbell?
Will Campbell. Sorry. I know you literally just said it and my mind just went blank. On a Will Campbell, this is not an indictment on any of them. My concern is all those players, you would have to invest the number 11 overall pick into them, right? Like maybe it's a little bit of a reach for Kelvin, maybe not so much for the other two based on how their stock is rising. My concern is if you are picking in slot 11, doesn't that person have to start for this team like right out of the gate? Don't know if any of those guys do, right? Because they're all going to be projected left tackles in the NFL. We know they're enamored with Colt McKivitz. We know what's at left tackle. So I think I would grow more concerned if that, and I've been the one, Steph, pounding the table about investment into the offensive line. You have to have a succession plan for Trent Williams. You've had all pro tackle play for literally the last like 18 years of your franchise. You know what I mean? Like you have to have something there. So it would make sense to invest in that, but only if they're going to see the field right out of the gate. So if they make that pick, then my brain starts to wonder what's happening with Trent Williams, because there's still a long time from now till the season, right? And that man has accomplished everything you can. We know what he went through personally at the end of last season, plus with injuries. There is literally nothing stopping that man from saying, I'm good. I don't need to do this again, right? Like there is that concern. So that would be telling, but that's I would be upset if the pick was anybody who is not projected to be a starter for you on day 1 of camp with the 11 pick overall. Maybe later in the first round, that's different, right? But with the 11, what do every draft evaluator tell you? There's really only 12 to 15 first round grades given out by teams. So you are picking in that range, which drastically increases the likelihood of getting a player that can contribute right out of the gate. Why are you going to handcuff yourself and say, nope, red shirt year for that guy? Yeah. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
And it also doesn't align with the urgency that I think the 49ers need to have in this draft. They know they need to have the urgency in this draft. They mention and acknowledge that almost every time that they talk about the draft, right? And how important it is to retooling, and particularly, I think, the defensive line, right? We know that. And again, I think the names that we're seeing on this list are indicative of them knowing that as well. So yeah, I'd be very surprised about Calvin Banks. I obviously understand the need. Yeah, you mentioned it, Trent Williams. Like, I mean, we know I don't want to say he's on borrowed time, but like it's his time. He decides he can go whenever he wants to. And as you mentioned, he's already accomplished pretty much everything. I don't think he retires like going into the season. I think he's already made that commitment this year. I think John Lynch has indicated as much. Not that he can't change his mind, but like I just don't see him being that kind of guy. But in any case, yeah, it needs to be a day one starter, or we're going to be looking at that pick sideways come September if this isn't someone who's going to be starting right away. You know, the best chance for the player that you pick at 11 to start right away is if it's a player on the defensive line. And not just that, there's a lot of options there as well. I mean, Mike Green, Landon Jackson, Michael Williams, Walter Nolan. These are defensive players that you could pick at 11 who I think could start in this defense right away, right? Now, to the point of it needs to be someone who starts right away. I think when we say those things, we wonder if a player is a risk if they don't start right away, right? Which in Kelvin Banks' case, I don't think is the case, but still the point stands. We want him to start right away. Well, there's other scenarios in which a player doesn't start right away. He's not ready. He's dealing with injury, things like that. There are other types of risks that I think will be available to the 49ers at 11, right? And let's talk about just two players on this list. Mike Green, Walter Nolan, those are two players right there who anytime they're mentioned is like character concerns.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure the 49ers bringing both of those players in for a visit has more than just the purpose of, hey, you're someone who we could pick at 11. I'm sure it also serves the purpose of let's get you in the building, see what this face-to-face interaction is like. Let's grill you. Like, they could pretty much decide if that's someone that they really want to keep on their board or not, but they're doing their due diligence. But that's one other aspect to all this, to crossing your T's and dotting your I's with some of these prospects, is that character part of it.
That's a huge problem. I think obviously there'd be a lot more confidence around someone like Mike Green or Walter Nolan if those character concerns didn't exist. Another one with Walter Nolan is he's played in a lot of places, right? Like he's bounced around. Like, what does that mean? Why? Like, do you honor your commitment? Is it like, do you not get along with coaches and you just have to bounce year from year to year? Like, there's so many things that they're going to investigate. I think the one thing that's probably not spoken much about when it comes to the consideration of who you might pick, or more importantly, not who, but what position you might pick, is the benefit of picking in the first round, or your first round pick, is getting that 5th year option. In this cost conscious culture that the San Francisco 49ers find themselves in right now, what position would they value the most to have that 5th year? And there's only two answers.
It's a great point.
It's the tackle position and it's the edge position. Those are the only ones that you really want the 5th year option on, because those are the ones that price you out of the equation. Mm-hmm. And then you look at edge and you're like, well, I got this guy, Nick Bosa, who's probably going to be here for a while, that I pay all world money. Do I build my team with like 2 franchise? Yeah. Edge rushers? Don't know. That gets really costly. So there's a lot of things to consider. So I one of your listeners, Steph, made a comment, and I don't know if I'm skipping ahead right here, is William Roberts. So shout out to can I call you Bill? I feel like we know each other now. Bill, can I call you Bill? Did you see the one where he says who the pick should be at 11?
Yeah, Jihad Campbell.
Yeah.
I have thoughts on this.
So I have very strong thoughts on this. And I going back to what you said before about your show with Wayne, which was awesome and excellent and tremendous entertainment, actually, that show. So if anybody hasn't watched, go back and watch it on either one of their channels. But that being said, is you value, you say linebacker and defensive line, right, are the 1A, 1B, right, as you kind of define them from a need perspective. I look at like, how do you make you need the best teams take a position of strength and make it even more of a strength and become dominant at the position. And when this defense was humming, they were really dominant in the second tier. How do you make all pro Fred stand out, right? And look better is you have somebody else there that you have to game plan for. And so there's only, if we're really going to get into it tonight, and I'm sure we'll get into it closer to the draft, there's two names that stick out for me, and none of them play offensive line or defensive line that I think make this team immediately better and are immediate starters. And this is one of them. And I am plenty comfortable in investing in this type of asset at number 11.
Okay. So I have thoughts. I agree.
Did I open up something I shouldn't have?
No. So as me and Wayne mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised, yes, if linebacker is addressed a lot earlier than maybe what people are projecting right now. After all, it is a huge need. Losing Greenlaw is a big deal, and I don't think people are talking about that enough, like from the draft perspective. Like I feel like that hasn't really caught on as much as, defensive line and all that, and rightfully so, I guess. But why are we still hearing corners being mentioned from national media, for example? Like, no one's talking about linebacker enough, in my opinion. So to that point, I do think Jihad Campbell, obviously one of the best options, if not the best option available, just from the talent standpoint, and just role that he played in college standpoint. Like, he would be NFL ready, right? That. Now, my concern with Jihad Campbell, and this only comes from what I've seen other people say about him, and it's the medicals.
Yep.
And that could potentially push him a little bit further in this draft. So I think if medicals are truly a concern for Jihad Campbell, he would not be the pick for the 49ers at 11, just based on everything else that we're saying here. Pick 11, or whoever they pick in the first round, whether it's, maybe a trade back, still an option. Anyone they pick in the first round, they better start. They better start right away, day one. Can you make that assumption with Jihad Campbell, right? I
think
you
could.
The
medical's clear. Who's going to play him off the field? I mean, his skill set is
that's true. I mean,
tremendous. Who's going to play him off?
Not too much competition.
No,
there isn't too much competition.
And let a young guy what's the worst he's going to do? Fly around the football field at 100 miles an hour? Okay, you know what I mean?
Saying, that's my concern.
Yeah,
and to kind of tie it into another player on this list, Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee, similar concerns. My God, I loved Norman Lott's tape.
He's stud.
He is so freaking good. He's one of my favorite interior linemen in this class. But then I saw that he has like chronic knee issues. And I was like, we can't do this again. We can't do chronic knee issues again a second time. And so now I have second thoughts about him. And the reason I think, like, more than anything, that he's on this list over maybe some other interior defensive linemen is the medicals. Like, they probably want to get him in the building and have that assessment with their own doctors and see if it's something that they need to worry about, see if it's something that, takes him off their board. And, that just goes back to the greater point of 30 visits in general, that it isn't always just about these are the guys that are on a board that we may definitely draft. It's who do we need to cross off the list within these last this last month, the last couple of weeks before the draft. So it is kind of a narrowing down. So yeah, those are two players that I'm just like cautious of. I think from need standpoint, Jihad Campbell makes a lot of sense. I am a fan of Chris Paul Jr. I do think that's a player who plays linebacker, the style that the 49ers sure do love. I could see him being someone they could pick up day 2, maybe early day 3, and he'd probably be able to start right away. But my concern, you mentioned Jihad Campbell, and, he wouldn't have a lot of competition, right? But you got to think about D. Winters also hurt a lot. So I'm just like, is that really a good thing to have two guys who could be dealing with injury quite a lot? I don't know. And again, I don't know the specifics on Jihad Campbell. I know it was the shoulder for him, right? He had like shoulder surgery or something like that. So that's different.
They need to do their due diligence on these injury guys. I would tell you that while ideal or chronic knee injuries are not ideal for any professional football player or any professional athlete for that matter, the risk is far less with someone like Norman Lott, right? Like, just because of the position he plays, like he's
later in the draft,
he is a strong, stout individual that plays with very good leverage. He can get by with some rough knees. The game might be a little harder, it might be a little bit longer, but the expectations are different. I think you can roll the dice with him. If you were concerned about the medicals for Jihad, like, that's a bigger issue, because that dude is going in the first 15 picks, like, no matter what, right? Unless all of a sudden there's this massive red flag around his medical. But I think you got to sniff that out, because I think he's what do we say the criteria for 11 here is? Day one starter. Like, day one starter to me is
little risk, in my opinion. Not just a day one starter, but little long-term risk.
For sure. I have another player that I love there that doesn't play any of these positions, but maybe we save that for another day and time.
No, let's do it. Let's
do
it.
I'm really big on Jahdae Barron.
I think that'd be a great pick, and it's one up the 49ers alley. I think so too. I listen, everybody loves a flashy new toy for Christmas, right? And that's what the NFL draft is for these teams. And he's a flashy new toy that plays a skill position that will be talked about and highlighted and could be a face for this defense. It's funny, if you read Daniel Jeremiah's like mock-up on Jahdae Barron, here's the risk with Jahdae. The risk at picking Jahdae in my brain is his description. I know, though, the pro comp comparisons, Brian Branch, that everybody wants to talk about, which is phenomenal, right? Brian Branch has been a stud since the day he's walked into this league. I'd actually say his description reminds me so much more of Diamador Lenore, a guy who can play inside, can play outside, is physical at the line of scrimmage. He's going to play that nickel linebacker for you. That is literally Demo's tape, right? Like, he's a physical guy. He's a strong cover guy. You can put him anywhere in the slot, outside. That, I would say, some of Diamador's best tape comes in the slot. And now you're probably in a position where he's got to slide outside. So you're going to drastically miss the ability to bump that guy in. Why not find the guy that just kind of fills that gap? But again, the risk is you're getting this level, all pro type almost performance from Diamador Lenore, who was a 5th round pick, versus like, is this the guy we need to invest in at 11 overall? But that is my most sincere draft crush. That is the guy that I want on this team, and I would be ecstatic if he went 11 overall, because again, I think he starts day one and he fits in multiple packages. He doesn't have to come off the field the way you play defense, or the way Robert Saleh is going to play defense. I thought you were going to say or compare him to Jimmy Ward from just like
another great comparison,
positional versatility standpoint. And that's something that Robert Saleh had at his disposal early on as a DC, and the 49ers really don't have that. Do they want that again? that presents itself in this draft for sure. I think a couple of different ways, but Jahdae Barron at 11 could potentially be that for them. I think if the 49ers do go a corner with pick 11, it would be someone like Barron rather than a Will Johnson. So yeah, that I'd probably like that more just because it would address a couple of needs. Speaking of, one of my favorites, Weston, is Jalen Walker from Georgia.
Yep.
And I mention him, and there's some people who love him, and there's some 49er fans who just don't get it, right? And I'm just like, guys, don't overthink it. Like, if you just watch him play, he's all over the place. And I think the concern is, how does he fit in with this defense, right? With the 49ers in particular, which I think is fair, but like, I don't think that should keep the 49ers from being scared to draft them. Like, I think for a player who is as impactful as he was, you find a role that works, that you can tailor to his skill sets, that you could use him at linebacker, you could use him at edge. I don't know. I wouldn't overthink Jalen Walker, but honestly, as of late, I've been thinking he goes in the first 10 picks anyway. So he's probably not there at 11. But do you have any thoughts on Jalen Walker?
I think my concern is more the fit. And super talented, as apparently all of these Georgia defensive linemen are. But that's also my problem. It's like they're just like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, and they play next to studs up and down that line. So how much attention, do they really have? I feel like they see a lot of one-on-ones. If this was Vic Fangio's 49er-led defense, the 2011s, 12s, 13s, he's a much better fit because it's more of a hybrid, right? Like he can stand up, play off the ball, do those sort of things. Not sure how well he fits in. But I wouldn't be if he fell to 11 and that was the pick, I wouldn't be disappointed about it at all. I mean, the guy is absurdly talented. And to me, that would signify that Robert Saleh was sitting in that, in the war room, pounding the table saying, this is the guy. I will find a way to get him involved in the defense. Again, 11 has to match the criteria of being a day one starter. No project in your defense. You have to be very confident you have a slot that you're going to stencil this guy right into. Good news is there's a lot of spots open on the defense. I'm sure he could find his way onto the field and rather quickly. But I just feel he feels odd just because of, he fits more of that 3-4, a little bit more of a hard, not your wide 9. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's fair. But man, dude was a menace. It's like I'd find a role for him, and I think he would do. He's one of those players that I think would do just fine. But yeah, I get it. All right, now Benali asks, which of these reported top 30 picks do you think is just all smokescreen? Hard to say. I mean, like, to just call any of these solely a smokescreen, I don't think would be accurate. I think the 49ers do have interest in all of these players. I think they can't draft all of them, obviously. So as far as, look, like I said earlier, I'm not buying that the 49ers get a corner early, like those top 15 corners. I'm not buying it. So if the 49ers visit with one of those guys, I'd be tempted to just say that'd be a smoke screen. I'm convinced John Lynch is paying some national media guys to put corners in his mock drafts, so everyone thinks they're going to take a corner. But no, I'm just joking. But no, I think these are all legit. I don't think they're smoke screens right now. But as we were talking about, I think there's a lot of due diligence going on. Like there's a lot of guys that maybe they're not sure yet that they want to draft them, like Norman Lott or Mike Green, Walter Nolan, but I wouldn't go as far as calling any of these a smoke screen right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't call them a smoke screen. I would think the least likely, especially if we just kind of project for 11 overall and 43 overall is probably Mike Green, right? Like, I don't know if they love him. And like, I think that's what the top 30 is about to be about. Like, hey, production looks good on tape. There are some concerns. Let's figure out what we feel about him, because 11 is a lot of capital. I think he's a first round, probably goes in the first round. I just don't think he's going to fulfill the appetite of what the 49ers are looking for at 11 overall. So I think he's the least likely, because they're probably not going to pull the trigger on him at 11, and he won't be there at 43. Like someone like Landon Jackson could be there later, right? Like, we've seen scenarios where Walter Nolan has fallen into the second round, right? We have seen those scenarios, at least in mock draft scenarios. Lott, we know, is probably late day 2, day 3, right? Same with TJ Sanders, Miles Frazier, right? Some of these guys, like, they'll be. So to me, it's like Mike Green just feels like not a smokescreen, just the least likely to become a 49er out of this list so far.
But you think just because of the off-field stuff that
I think because of the off-field stuff, and I just don't know. I don't know.
Because
it's
Weston,
too much of a one-hit wonder, like tape, right? For
think,
me, right?
Okay, just from like watching him, to me, he looks like he should be one of the top options for edge rusher on the 49ers list. Like, just from fit, what they're looking for opposite Nick Bosa. I think Mike Green, James Pierce, those are two guys right there.
That guy. The second guy is the guy that
who also, like, I've heard character concerns with too. Nothing specific, but like, I don't know. What is it with all these players getting attached to character concerns? And they're all vague, by the way, except for Green. His are pretty little more specific, but everyone else's are, no one can explain them.
Pierce, I can explain Pierce's, because I'm a Vols guy. When I do get the opportunity to watch Saturday football, like in real time, that's who we're watching or prioritizing. If this was a year and a half ago, Pierce would have been the number one prospect. Like, he would be Abdul Carter, right? Like, that's how hyped he was. That was what his train is. He is that talented and that good. The overall consensus is not a lot of confidence in the quarterback play for Tennessee this year and what was going to happen. They really never thought, like, they actually overachieved based on what the team's expectations were going to be a part of the college football playoff. The consensus is Pierce kind of mailed in the season, ensuring that he get to the NFL and not ruin it that way. Yeah. And I will never use the word quit, because I don't want to put those words in somebody's mouth. If they're going to quit, they need to tell you they're going to quit. I would not say he quit on his team. I would just say he played a conservative brand of ball because you saw instances, right? And what they'll chalk that up to is say he doesn't have the motor, or, he's not 100% every play. No, I think he made a business decision in Tennessee this year, was I will be a first round pick in the NFL draft. I will be set for the rest of my life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think he made one of those. Dude is freakishly and absurdly talented. And I think if he had a different rep about him from the 2024 season, you're talking about him going in the top 10 picks. And right now you're not.
A lot of that actually sounds similar to some of the things I've seen, or the concerns I've seen for Walter Nolan as well. So it seems more of an effort thing, more of a self-preservation kind of thing, business decision kind of thing. And I get it. For teams, it's hard to know, do we have to worry about this when you are in the NFL? Like, are you going to be doing that? Like, it's
crapshoot.
That's what I'm saying. So all that to say, as far as just fit goes, the athleticism that they showed, play, just film alone, those two guys, I think, just look like Niners from what they want, I think, opposite Bosa. But here's an idea. We also have Michael Williams on this list, also from Georgia. We were just talking about Jalen Walker a little bit ago. So when I watched Michael Williams, his best attribute is that he's so good in run defense, which is something I think the 49ers
need.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but yeah, I think it's going to be intentional, just wanting to improve their run defense. And so Michael Williams does make some sense in that regard. The problem I have with him there, though, at 11, again, is that, yes, he's going to be solid on those base downs, right? But just like pure pass rushing, I don't know if I've seen him put it all together yet. I think he's still going to have some developing to do on that side. So is that worth 11? Right? Or do the 49ers want to fix their run defense so much that, they want to get the best, edge setting edge in Michael Williams, who may not have it all as a pass rusher?
I don't know. What do you value more? You know what I
Exactly.
mean? What is your secondary going to look like, right? Can you cover for the extra second if you're not getting home and getting the pass rush? I think there's a lot of variables to it. My personal opinion is I don't value what Michael Williams is going to bring to the 49ers at 11. I just don't. But I think we're going to talk about this a lot over the next 3 weeks, Steph, and you're going to talk about it weekly, and we'll talk about it here on Mondays. Is the 49ers, like, yes, we know what their obvious needs are, or what we have pegged as their obvious needs, but they can just let the board fall because there's not one position they're trying to fill, right? You know what I mean? Like the priority is going to be with their first 3, 4, 5 picks. So like, are we picking guys that are going to have an opportunity to get on the field right out of the gate, right? And that's what it's going to be. And I just don't think Michael Williams fit. Like, I think this team knows when they were great, what their defense looked like when they're great, and they were really good at rushing the passer.
Yeah.
So find that guy, right? If it's being at 11, who's the guy who you think improves your pass rush? I don't care if it's from the edge. I don't care if it's from the interior. I don't care. Find the guy. I don't care if it's from the slot. You know what I mean? Find a guy that can help you get to the quarterback, because sacks, getting home, usually are game-changing plays. They're at very least drive-changing plays, right? And we needed more of those in 2024. This defense was terrible on third down. How would you get better on third down? You get after the quarterback. So I think it's got to be plus rush attributes for the top 15 picks.
Yeah, I think so too. So obviously we're going to get more names. We've got these 10 already, some intriguing names, as we know. Michael Williams visited the 49ers today. I think a couple of these visits have already happened, but, if you have been following this team for a while, you do know that the 49ers like to have the majority of their visits happen on the same day, most likely to be next week. So we're going to see some of these guys and probably some other guys that we didn't know of before get announced, or we're going to see that they're there within the next week or so. But this Wednesday, what's happening is a 49ers local pro day. And, it's usually a day for the 49ers to have some local talent, join and have basically a showcase of sorts. And so there are some intriguing names in this group as well that we know have been invited, but that doesn't always mean that they're going to accept the invite and or attend. So this is the list of players that we have so far. And let's see, how many players is this? We got 14 players that we know of. We see a lot of Cal. We see a lot of San Jose State. We see some Stanford. I'm sure the 49ers invited all of the prospects from this class from those 3 schools at the very least. There's also guys who played at other schools but are native to the Bay Area. So you're going to see some of those as well. And obviously, like we already talked about it, like Alec Iomanner from Stanford. He's one of the most intriguing. Ted Buchanan from Cal. He's probably the other one that's most intriguing on this list. I know people were asking, like, did Nick Nash, wide receiver from San Jose State, did he get invited? And I said probably, like he probably did. But whether or not he accepts that invite and chooses to participate is another question, because so same for Alec, same for Ted. I think there's not much value for guys like that to participate in these local pro days because they probably know they're going to be drafted already. They're going to end up with a team. So really it's for a lot of these lesser known, prospects to, showcase their skills. A lot of these guys didn't get to the combine. Most of these guys didn't get to play in an all-star game this off season. So they really had their school's pro day and then this local pro day to, have teams' eyes on them. So that's what it's mostly going to be about. But hopefully one of those other guys does participate, because I'd love to see them, get to meet the coaching staff and all that as well.
I always feel like a lot of these guys end up being camp bodies, or a handful of them, right? Because they are local and those things. But I agree with you with like Io Manor or Buchanan or some of these other guys. It's like it's a conundrum for some of these players, if we're being honest about it, because the reality is some of them participated in a pro day, but when you're a fringe player, right? Like if you're a day 3 draftable player, you also want to be very careful of not putting too much out there of yourself between pro day, your school's pro day, your local pro day, whatever it might be. You kind of want your tape to speak for itself, right? Like somebody like Ted Buchanan, I mean, his tape speaks volumes of the player that he is. Don't get caught in a conversation of, oh, he ran real slow at his pro day. Like what happened to that kid in Miami? Right at his pro day that ran like a 4.8, that wide receiver, right? Like put on tape. Dude's open. I don't care how you get open. In this league, sometimes it's better to be quicker than it is to be fast, right? What was his 10-yard split? But the narrative's going to be he's a 4.8 guy, and that's going to crush his draft status, right? If it was just tape, no pro day, probably talking about an early day 3 guy. I mean, he probably still will be. But that being said, like, they have to fend off these narratives because they're not day 1 players in the eyes of the scout. So it is, I agree with you. That's my long-winded way of saying the 49ers probably invited 60 prospects to this local pro day. They'll probably get 20 and change that show up to them. And most of them are going to be guys that we have not watched tape on, right? Like, and haven't seen and heard of, I mean, God bless Brad Graham, who is started this Buchanan hype train, and he will not let go of it until it happens. But that's huge for Buchanan in the eyes of like
he's big. Like
49, like opened a lot of eyes. And I know Brad's got his little biases. He helps out with Cal and does all those things, but he also knows what he's talking about and what his eyes tell him. But like, again, if Ted ran a 4.940, like, at his local pro day, at the pro day or local pro day, that hurts. That doesn't help. The game tape helps.
Yeah, for sure. So that'll be happening on Wednesday, and I'm sure the 49ers will put out probably a full list of the participants. So of course the guys who accepted their invites. So don't freak out if you don't see some of these names like Io Manor there or Nick Nash there. Doesn't mean that the 49ers did not invite them. It just means they didn't accept the invite. They're not going to participate. 49ers will only give us the list of the guys who will be participating. So just a heads up there. And one little note that I wanted to make about the visits. I remind people of this every year, that the visits, the reason they're called 30 visits or sometimes top 30 visits is only because a team can have up to 30 players in for these visits. Certain players that get excluded from this, if they are local and the 49ers bring them in for a visit, they don't count against the 30, which is great. But it isn't always just the top 30 players the 49ers have on their board. In fact, it never is that. You'll see names of guys who are clearly not first-round players on this list, but they're just bringing in, again, just because it's 30 guys that they want to bring in to host for a visit for any reason. As we mentioned, it could be legit interest. It could be, hey, just want to double check, do some due diligence on this guy. Character concerns, could be the medicals they want to check out. So a variety of different reasons. It isn't always just these 30 players are options for the 49ers at 11. Definitely not that. No. Just wanted to remind everyone about that.
It's not uncommon to even have a day 3 prospect come in, right? I mean,
that's when DFAs even.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you make your money in this league, is finding diamonds in the rough there.
And I actually think when it comes to like those priority undrafted free agents, you know, those are the guys that as soon as the draft is over, teams are calling up and trying to get them to sign with them. I think it's smart to get some of those guys in for 30 visits. You're building that connection, and it just better ensures that, hey, if this guy's available when the draft ends and we make that phone call, it's more likely that he's going to choose a team that he already has built that connection with. So that's why you'll see some day 3 or even like PFA guys on that list as well. And you never know, could be the next Evan Anderson. I mean, he was a 30 visit last year, and you know, he ended up making the squad, up for a bigger role this year.
I was going to say that's starting defensive lineman Evan Anderson to you right now.
Show some respect. Show some respect. Yeah, so this is an exciting part of the year, at least definitely for me. And you know, we're going to hear many more names get added to this list. Again, like I said, in the next week or so. So make sure you guys are tuned in with all of that on the Draft Tracker. Appreciate everyone that, you know, continues to use it and stay up to date on all the latest. So one little note that I wanted to say here, and kind of an announcement as you guys are watching live here. So trying to get Jalen Conyers, who's one of the 49ers 30 visits, on the show. Hoping to get something in tonight, maybe as soon as this show is over or shortly after. So just so you know exactly when I go live with Jalen, make sure that you are subscribed and make sure you hit that notification bell. Probably like happening tonight, or like I said, if we can't make it work tonight, probably later this week. But make sure you guys check that out. Prospect interview with Texas Tech tight end and 49ers 30 visit player Jalen Conyers. Really excited for that one. And yeah, I'm cooking up some other interviews as well for the next couple of weeks. Make sure you guys, you know, always keep it locked here on the channel. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate you, Weston. Yeah, KJ in the comments.
just killing me from the jump tonight. Just slaying me from tonight.
Oh my God. Who do you think has a faster 30, Conyers or Weston, people? Let us know in the comments.
I'm gonna go stretch. I'm gonna do the rich eyes, and I'm gonna film myself with a stopwatch.
I would be like fascinated to know like how fast I could run a 40. Like we started the show talking about this. We're gonna end it talking about it. Like
it's not as fast as you think.
No, absolutely not. I'm gonna like I'll feel so bad about myself afterwards, but I also, you know, didn't have months to train for it. So, that's my excuse.
You know, we should do this before the season.
We should
do
we
our
totally
own
should.
Combine, our own.
It would it would be hilarious. So, but appreciate all of you that tuned in. Everyone cracking jokes in the comments. Appreciate all of you. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. Interview with Jalen Conyers coming soon, so make sure you guys check that out. But for now, talk to you in a bit, folks. Have a good rest of your Monday. If not, peace.